What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video for the First Descendant today, we are looking at the second patch to come for season 2, which most recently they had a Q&A, or basically a demo of from the developers. This is kind of like becoming a usual, I would say, monthly thing, almost like that, and it's a great insight into not only the things that are coming, but also kind of like their thought process and essentially how they are changing things in the game. Now, this is largely thought of as the INES RAYA patch, meaning, you know, like we're getting a new Descendant, but there's actually a whole bunch of other things that are also sort of like baked into the patch, which is really cool, and just, you know, obviously more content, things for us to do in the game. They started off right away with something called Void Erosion Purge, which is a new end game activity that essentially seems like a sort of like a time limit based stage rush thing, right? So you have all these different levels. There's 20 stages in total, and you move from each stage to the next, and it's kind of like you're fighting against the clock. So you have some tough enemies that you have to kill, and essentially if you're not able to beat the time, then you don't get the final bosses to show up, and I think your run basically fails. Now, the reason why this new endgame activity is super important is because you are going to be able to use this activity to get weapon cores, which is an entire new system. There's an entire section on that we're going to talk about later in this video, but essentially it becomes like another activity that we will need to farm to essentially empower our ultimate weapons even further and pretty much make them like ultimate. Now, from a time perspective, it seems like in total you're looking at about 15 to 20 minutes for a run or something like that. And also bear in mind that there is another patch, let's call this the third patch of season 2, that is coming on the 6th of Feb, which will augment this system even more and drop some more missions and stuff like that in the back for us to do this activity at an even higher level with more difficulty and with a different set of rewards as well. And speaking of rewards, and basically what this entire system is about is there's a two-pronged sort of change coming to ultimate weapons. The first one being that ultimate weapons are now being tied to a specific element. Now, for example, let's use Thunder Cage. Thunder Cage's effect that it does, its ultimate effect, its unique effect, is a lightning effect, right? But the point is, it's not considered a lightning weapon. Its bullets are still just normal bullets unless you put the lightning element on it. Now, this system is actually going to introduce elements to ultimate weapons, and this is super interesting because this gives them obviously like more of an identity and essentially helps the weapons like sort of like fill a specific role. And this is important because a lot of these like matching elements to deal more damage and that sort of stuff is going to be important in the Void Erosion Purge. So this makes a lot of sense that they kind of like set it up this way now. Some of the elements are funny, like Kingsguard Lance is toxic, where I don't know, I think it would have probably been better as chill, but whatever. But it's also important that what they explained is that they didn't overhaul the damage and, you know, make all the weapons now deal additional elemental damage on part of it. It just means that the damage that the weapon deals is now considered that element. This of course also means that essentially you can have dual element damaging weapons. I mean, you could have had that already before, but this will probably really be like a thing now, where you can essentially still have a module in that produces a certain element, and then the weapon itself produces another element, and that can probably be very beneficial. Again, like the combination that I was talking about just now, Kingsguard Lance. So Kingsguard Lance's intrinsic element will be toxic, and then you could put in a chill element, and now it's actually going to do both of those elements, and you're going to get the benefit of both of those. So that will be interesting to see. It might mean that we will need to sort of like check certain of the weapons, because they're bound to be a little bit more sexy now with some combinations that we can put in. And of course, usually with these updates we get new modules and things like that as well, so it's potential that we might get more modules that further on dive into like making weapons more powerful if you use certain elements. So it's really going to be pretty sick. Now, speaking about, again, continuing on with ultimate weapons, weapon core unlocking is a big thing that's coming in now as well. And basically what it is as soon as you hit MR18, account level 18, then you'll be able to go to Deslin, who now is actually fucking useful and is actually going to do something. So if you don't know who that is, there's a reason why you don't know. Deslin is a NPC in the capital in Albion that sells like weapons. But these are like shitty weapons and shitty gear, so he's kind of like the worst vendor ever. So he is going to be in charge of this weapon core unlocking system. And basically what this is that ultimate weapons will now have 5 slots on them. Now, you will have to spend a specific item to actually unlock these slots, and you can unlock these slots after you've gotten, I believe, the development of the weapon. The translation here was a little bit wonky, but as I understand it, like, you can unlock the weapon slots after you have 4 out of 4 of a weapon. I could be wrong, and of course if I am, then, you know, it is what it is, translation be damned. But it seemed, because they spoke about unique effect development, right? So that to me means that every time when you put another ultimate weapon into a current ultimate weapon until you get 4 out of 4, once you get to 4 out of 4, your unique effect is fully developed, meaning like all of the best, you know, perks and all of that stuff and everything like that is in there. And so that to me just seems like kind of like that's what they were trying to say with that. But either which way, the point is each ultimate weapon will have 5 of these core slots. You can spend this material to unlock the core slots. The core slots have different modulations, so some of them are matched with specific cores that need to go into them. And these cores can also have multiple, you know, different effects on them. Some are, you know, some of the cores are for elemental damage, some of the cores are for you know, more crit dam, you know, all of that. And so the point is that you'll then put these into the ultimate weapons, and this will further on make them far more lethal. Now, there's a couple of random sort of things to this. First of all, you find these cores in the new activity, Void, Erosion, Purge, and you'll have to farm it from there. And then basically there's also qualities of these, and then when you actually mount them, then it will make a randomized roll within a certain, you know, level. So like they were showing, for example, 2 to 8% increase. So when you mount it, then what can happen is you can get a shitty roll, and maybe you get like a 2, which is the minimum roll. So then the point is you would have to do this multiple times until you get like the right roll, and this is where the RNG part of it comes in. So it's not as simple as just going and running Void, Erosion, Purge once, getting all the fucking, you know, golden modules, putting them into your guns, and boom, wham, bam, you're done. I mean, it wouldn't be the First Descendant if it was that easy. So it would mean that you would have to repeatedly do this, and the RNG side of this can see that maybe you get lucky with the very first time you do this, bam, you get 8% or whatever, and you're good to go. And other times it will probably take you longer. To me, this is kind of like in line with what we see with weapons, like especially when we reroll substats. Sometimes you get it, like I've literally had all 4 substats pop for me on the very first fucking roll that happened to me on my second Enduring Legacy, which was just ridiculous. And then other times I've literally rolled maybe like 1,500 of the material away, and I just never could get it. So it is a bit of a shit show, a crapshoot, if you will. But nonetheless, this will be a system that will allow us to develop those weapons to their, let's say, like I said, ultimate version, and probably the best version of those weapons that we can get. Until they bring some more new stuff in. Then we also, of course, saw the new Descendant INES. So she is an electric Descendant. Super cool looking, fast, sleek, everything like that. They made a whole big deal about her abilities. They showed them. They did not show the ability cards or anything like that. They basically just had footage of her in the lab, and then they were showing the abilities. She seems to be sort of like tailored towards high damage AoE and fast movement. That's kind of like the vibe that I'm getting with it. We already have an electric Descendant like that, which is Bunny, so it's weird. She might maybe not be as AoE as Bunny, but she might hit harder, so she might be the better option for if you want to boss rush or something like that. Not that Bunny is terrible. High voltage Bunny is pretty decent at dealing decent electric damage against Void Intercept bosses, but she might be, you know, the best version of that. Now, just running through the abilities, like I'm not going to go through all the detail that they did in terms of like the abilities, because first of all, from a visual perspective, we really only saw like the abilities firing off. Again, like I said, we don't see the cards, we don't see anything like that. And then the names are also weird, because the translator would call the ability one name, and then they would say another name, and it would be translated differently. So, you know, the name is also like a fuck up. But basically you have her first ability, which is 2 of her abilities being tech and 2 of her abilities being singular. So very similar to what we saw with Keelan. So her first ability is singular, and it's essentially a chain lightning, and this chain lightning will move in between the enemies and then debuff them with something called conductivity. Now, see this conductivity as essentially like a debuff that any of her other abilities that you use on minions that have conductibility on it or on already will then just take far more damage. So that's essentially like you debuff him once with chain lightning, and then you hit him with the rest of the abilities. Now, her second ability is a tech ability, and it's called Conductor. And essentially what this does is it just further on deals more damage to enemies that have this debuff on them. So sort of normal combo I think would be like 1, 2, and then you're basically getting like a decent amount of damage. The third ability is Discharge, and it's kind of like this crouch down, and then she shoots like this AoE fucking like cone kind of thing in front of her, and that obviously again deals more damage to enemies that already have this debuff on them. And last but not least, her fourth ability seems to be this super wide like AoE lightning trap that she puts down, and it creates kind of like this circle on the ground that essentially electrocutes everything a bunch of times. So it's kind of like going over time. Now the third ability that I just quickly want to mention again is a charge up ability, so you can essentially hold it down longer for more damage. And this is also important because they mention one of her Transcendent mods. Now I don't know if that means that she only launches with one Transcendent mod, because usually they tell us more about all of them, or maybe they were talking about both Transcendent mods and I somehow like missed something in the source. But basically her Transcendent mod will augment her first and her third ability, so the two singular abilities, to charge faster and deal more damage. And then her third ability, which is this AoE funnel cone thing that she shoots after charging, becomes then rather something that you charge, and then she just dodges forward and does like this flip and dumps like a bunch of damage. So the way that I'm seeing it right now, it seems like this Transcendent mod could be specific for her for a mobbing perspective, since it seems to make her more mobile, and it seems to make her you know, sort of like better at moving through the battlefield. But I could be wrong. That could also mean that this third ability becomes like a great ability to use on Void Intercept bosses. Time will tell, and we'll basically have to see. To get INES, you will have to farm the Void Vessel. So at the moment right now, if you want to get Keelan, you have to do hard difficulty Void Vessel runs, and then you get Keelan parts at the end. Now what will happen is Keelan's parts will move down to normal difficulty, so you'll farm normal for Keelan if you're still looking for him, and you'll do hard, and the Keelan parts will be replaced by INES parts. So not a new activity, anything like that. We're going back to the Void Vessel. My experience / love for the Void Vessel is hit or miss. I don't mind it, but I do at least one run a day just for my own fucking, you know, development and sanity, and for my fucking dog and all that shit. But doing more than like 2 in a row or 2 a day is super tedious and becomes actually fucking quite annoying. So I don't know if there's something that they can do about that, if there's some of the transition, some of the things that they can take out of it. The randomness of the Void Vessel means that some of these runs take a little bit longer, especially the ones where you have to like grapple over those big fucking like conveyor belts and everything like that. That tends to slow you down a little bit. So I don't know if there's something that they can do with it, if they can just maybe cut out some of those pieces. I know that kind of like defeats the purpose, because it does, you know, bring some form of variety to the Void Vessel. But in the end though, yeah, I think this has just become like an activity that you kind of like just want to blast through as fast as possible, so you can get your dog food and you can hopefully develop that shit. Then they showed some stats for the Infernal Walker kills, and my dudes, we have been fucking the Infernal Walker up. I love it. So it's very cool that I see so many people killing the Infernal Walker. There's like a success rate of like over 60%, which is really, really good. So it means that people are playing this content and are actually succeeding in killing that boss, which is really cool. 60 is it seems like it's low, but considering that there's a lot of people who play this game like super casual, and Infernal Walker is rough and does actually require you to have some understanding of a build and some understanding of, you know, staying out of the fire, you know, something like that. So it is impressive that over 60% have killed this. I really do like that. The reason why I bring up Infernal Walker also is because this patch is also bringing us the next boss. So the next boss is a Defiler, which is kind of like a juiced up version of the Devourer. The mechanics in the fight look kind of like the same. It makes these like sort of like areas on the battlefield where you have a cone over and there's a cell inside, and you have to go inside and destroy that. The mechanic here apparently is that the more of those cones that are out on the battlefield deployed, the faster and the more powerful the Defiler will be. So you'll have to mechanically work between fighting him, but also as soon as those cones appear, those areas, you need to dip into them and basically blow them up. He is going to be toxic flavor, which means that he's going to be weak to electric, and that makes sense because they're launching INES. INES is, you know, obviously an electric descendant, so the sort of like handshake here is that INES will be probably good at killing him, but I think Bunny will probably fuck his shit up as well, so that's kind of like all good. Let's not forget Sharon either, who's also an electric descendant, so it's not like we don't have enough of these going around that are actually going to smash this out. Then just some random stuff that they were showing. You can research advanced shape stabilizers now, which is cool. Those were before, we were just getting them from drops and from the ETA shops. Now you can actually research them. Of course, these are used to sort of like switch the polarities of the drops in terms of like the chance of getting them. And this is a great way for you to essentially target, you know, try to get certain things which have a super low chance of actually like rolling. So the fact that we can research these now is great. This means that you, technically speaking, have an unlimited supply, so it's really going to help people who still need to do a lot of these things and need to get a lot of these pieces catch up. They also showed something called module copy and paste, which is really interesting. You have different tab pages on your Descendant right now, and if you want to make different builds, then and some of them use the same mods, then it's a tedious thing of like having to recreate it every time. Module copy and paste will mean that you can copy in between, which is great. And then they're saying the reason why this system exists is because they're actually going to augment this into something that's coming in March, where you can actually look at other Descendants, so you can inspect them, and then you can copy their modules and you can essentially copy their build, which is pretty cool. It's like a great way for people that don't necessarily have great knowledge of the modules of a build or something like that to essentially try to copy something that they see another Descendant using, and then try to figure out why is it so good, why does it make sense. So yeah, I think it's a really good idea. It makes a lot of sense. And then sort of like the back end of the video was the balance changes that are coming to Jayber, Valby, and Luna. They showed Jayber first, and they kind of like talked through like why they made certain changes. Nonetheless, there's not massive changes to these three Descendants. I definitely think Luna is the one that benefited the most from the changes that they made. Jayber still, to me, so the change that they made with Jayber is that his fucking gun that you use to like zip up the fucking turrets and stuff like that now is an AoE like explosive firing gun now. Whoop-de fucking do. And basically that he can drop his turrets faster, and that you don't have to pick one up anymore to drop another one. So that's okay. I still don't think it addresses the big problem that Jayber has, and that is that his damage is just not comparable to some of the other Descendants. He was a fucking monster in the beta, and I don't expect them to take him back to that level. But certainly from a power perspective, there are a lot of other Descendants that, you know, do a shit ton of AoE damage, a shit ton of damage to a specific point, and they do it a lot easier than having to like cumbersomely move turrets around and that sort of thing. Again, I don't have a easy solution as to what the problem solve is here for Jayber. Perhaps making that you essentially have auto summon turrets like as soon as you stand still for a while, or if you press a button it like just automatically maybe the turret should hover around them and fucking just shoot stuff. I don't know. But you know, and those might be fucking stupid ideas, but at this point in time, it's again, I haven't tried it yet, so I could be moaning about this now and then it ends up being like fucking dope, just these two little changes that they made. But just on paper and what I saw there, I was like, dude, this does like nothing for me. So it could also just be because I have a massive hate boner for Jayber, so that could of course be a problem as well. Then we had Luna. Luna basically is a lot of mobility changes for her, and what they tried to do was make the audio mini game, like essentially when you're trying to hit the notes and get your note combos out, they want to make this easier and less punishing for missing notes. And that's what this change is all about. When you're on your disc or whatever, your fucking ultimate, you can now also basically jump and you can move around and that sort of thing, which is really good. So it seems like it's going to be a little bit more fun to play with now, because I think that's, at the very least in my community, people aren't necessarily unhappy with her power level, and having a Luna with some other damage dealing Descendants is the fastest way that you can kill bosses by far. A Luna and 3 other Descendants cleans up fucking everything like super fast. It's ridiculous. but a lot of people will just say, dude, that's awesome, but she's just not fun to play. So hopefully this addresses that situation a little bit. They did mention also that her noise surge transcendent mod, which is her AoE damage dealing transcendent mod, is also getting buffed and actually dealing more damage. So that's going to mean that she's even better at AoE. I think she's really powerful just by default. I think her AoE is fucking great. It's just the point of like nobody plays her, and like I said, because a lot of people complain and say it's like not a fun way to play. So hopefully this addresses some of that stuff. I guess we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding, as they say. And then we had the Valby as well. Now Valby is, from a power level, I think Valby is just fine. Most recently she has been fucking shit up, and there was a bug that made her a little bit more lethal, but she's still pretty badass. And you know, just some basic plop builds with her, or fucking water bubble just absolutely annihilates. But what it seems that they focused on in terms of changes for Valby with this balance patch was more about, again, her mobility and just making it so that it's easier to move with some of her abilities. So her third ability, for example, cleanup, kind of like locks you down. You can't, you know, you're locked down and you're just like skating, and now you can actually jump. And that's gonna mean that ability is gonna feel a lot better to use, which is pretty awesome. So I mean, you can jump while you're doing it, which is fucking, it seems like you're like, okay, well, you know, that's nice. It's a big change. It's massive. Yeah, I think Valby's in a great fucking place right now, and this kind of like quality of life stuff, just making her like more fun to play, meaning like the abilities feel more crispy and you can fucking like jump around while you do them and stuff, is definitely like, you know, the best way to go. So big fan of that, fucking love it. And obviously they mentioned that now they have the next roster of Descendants that they're working on, and they're always going to be doing this. So we can probably expect for the February patch some more changes to some other Descendants as well. And this is obviously something that'll just continue on. They didn't mention any changes to any ultimate weapons, but there's probably going to be some of that as well. So this is always going to be a thing. They're always going to be tweaking and the levers and the knobs and the stuff in the background to kind of like make these weapons and stuff perform differently or so on, and address some of the complaints that the community has, which is really, really appreciated, because that means that they are listening to us, and that is something that you shouldn't, you know, take for granted necessarily. And then to finish off, they also now mentioned that First Walker and Obstructer will also be soloable, which in my mind means that everything except Deathstalker now is soloable, which is huge. I like that. I don't necessarily want to always play in groups, or at the very least I want the choice. So if I want to run it in a group, I want to do that. If I want to quickly just get a solo kill because I'm looking to just, you know, roll on a specific pattern, then I want to be able to do that as well. So this is cool. I think this is all of them now. I don't think I'm wrong, but I think this is all of them except for Deathstalker now. And most likely somewhere down the line we're going to get Deathstalker as well. I just don't know how you make that fight only solo, but I'm sure they'll figure out something then. But that's it for the video. Big patch, big-ish patch with a bunch of stuff. I mean, we are getting a new Descendant, and we're getting an entire new activity which has material in it that'll allow us to develop all of our ultimate weapons, which means now we can just make those weapons even better. So there will be some more new builds for the meta ultimate weapons. My god, I mean, we have some high power ultimate weapons already, like fucking Enduring Legacy. Imagine 5 weapon cores on top of that as well. Dude, I'm salivating at the idea. But that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. Looking forward to the patch. It drops next week, and as always, fucking cheers.